Monday, and welcome to The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Monday, April 7th, 2025. And Val, there's something about April 7th that I was thinking about. Two things. One, you got on that ugly Duke shirt. They were supposed to be playing tonight, and we'll talk about that later. But they're not, and there's a reason why they're not playing tonight. It's also my birthday. I'm in the 60 club now. I'm 60 years old officially today. And so I'm going to look up whatever discounts I can get. I should be extending my discount pool so I can get more discounts now, Val. So I'm looking forward to that out of all the things. But one thing I'm not looking forward to, Val, and this is on a serious note, I went to the Social Security website, couldn't get on. So we'll talk about that in a minute because I also went and looked at my investment account. It don't look good, Val. The stock market opened a little while ago, but we're recording this on Monday morning. So let's start there.
Mm-hmm.
Not with the Duke miss, but with the stock market. Uh, how is the market doing as of right now on Monday morning as we're talking? And what does it portend for the rest of the day and probably for the rest of the next few months?
Well, when the Asian folks speak, everybody else listen. When the Asian markets open right here in the great old US of A, the Dow had totally lost 2,100 down, and approximately that. And we're looking at like 3,800 now. Uh, this is not good. It's going in the wrong direction. And somebody needs to stop listening to this one guy, Donald Trump, who has put himself in a position that he knows more about the stock market and the American and world economy than all the economists put together. If he knew that, he wouldn't be president right now. What he would be, he would have 10, 20 times more money than Mr. Doge himself. He would be the richest guy in the world by far if he knew that much about the national and international economic situation. And he doesn't. I was looking at his resume a little bit a few weeks ago, and it talked about his time at the Wharton School of Business, University of Pennsylvania. And they were euphemistic in saying that he did not graduate with honors. So I know what that really means. So this guy has failed businesses, declared bankruptcy 5 times, did all kinds of things. Everything that he tried, he has failed at. Everything except snookering people to get elected president of the United States. He did that twice. He's failed at everything business. And now we're going to listen to him on the business side to tell us that tariffs is the way to greatness again. And I'm looking at the United States economy, Ed, comparatively speaking to the rest of the world. Whose economy would we trade for or with? That we'd rather have their economy than ours? There is none. But to listen to Donald Trump, we are in hell-bent shape. And we need to do something to make America great again. You know, it's as though we're in the bottom third or the bottom quintile of the economic countries, and that we need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. So we're going to introduce tariffs and we'll be on our way back up. You're already at the top. Where are you going? I mean, I'd love for some of these people, some of Donald Trump's cohorts, to explain to the rest of us how things are going to look and why at the end of their tirade.
Yeah. Well,
the rest of the world just going to lay down and become punks for the USA and give all of their businesses and all of their money and resources to us so we can be kings of the world? I don't know. How does it end up without them jumping on us? We're only 4.6% of the world's population. And we want the other 95% to bow down, kiss our ring, and become slaves to the 4.6%. It ain't going to happen.
Right. Well, apparently we can't count. So that's the first thing, right? We also can't figure out that if China decides that they need to move their market somewhere else, they just will. I've said it over the last few weeks. I was in Africa for an extended visit recently, and there's so many Chinese products going into Africa, they just switch their market to a different place. There's 7.5 billion other people that you can sell to that won't impose tariffs, right? That will welcome the goods because they want to improve the standard of living of their people. I think, Val, here's the thing. He called Donald Trump, that is. I hate saying his name. Donald Trump, that is, called people panicking. So here's a video of him on the plane on Air Force One last night trying to, talk down that this is a problem.
Get into late summer, early fall, and people are doing their back-to-school shopping. Do you think they'll have inflation to worry about at that point?
I think there's not going to be. I don't think inflation is going to be a big deal because if you look at me, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars. This is not new to me. I took in during my 4 years hundreds of billions of dollars from China.
Is there pain in the market? At some point, you're unwilling to tolerate this idea of a Trump put. Is there a threshold?
I think your question is so stupid. I mean, I think I don't want anything to go down, but sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something.
So Val, the reporter says, "Hey, what's the bottom line here? Where does it become painful to people? Where are you willing to stop?" And he said to her, "It's a stupid question." No, it's not a stupid question. For people who, like me, who wanted to go to the Social Security Administration website today and look at what they're likely to get for Social Security, because now it's important to me. Or if I want to go look at my stock portfolio and see how much money I have in case I need to do something in case of an emergency, and it's not looking good for me, he just totally dismisses it. However, Elon Musk goes out. He's in Europe over the weekend, and he says this.
I hope that the United States and Europe can establish a very close partnership. We obviously are, there's an alliance already, but I'm hopeful that there can be a very close relationship with America and Europe. And I'm hopeful, for example, with the tariffs, that at the end of the day, I hope it is agreed that both Europe and the United States should move, ideally, in my view, to a zero tariff situation, effectively creating a free trade zone between Europe and North America. And that would be that's what I hope occurs.
So Val, that's Elon Musk. Now Trump just said everybody's panicking. Musk then comes around and says, well, there should be free trade zones with no tariffs. Which one is it, Val? And is Elon Musk done as the Doge, head of Doge, and now he's gonna go over and try to negotiate something backhand in Europe to offset these tariffs? Why was he in Germany and saying stuff about a free trade zone when Donald Trump is on the plane a few hours ahead of that saying that he's not making any concessions? Which one is it?
Nobody knows. Elon Musk has too much power. And all of that power is from the fact that he gave hundreds of millions of dollars to Donald Trump to run his campaign and win his election. And now Donald Trump is sort of like paying him back. The only thing Donald Trump fears are rich people who are significantly richer than he is. That's the only thing he respects because he wants to be that himself one day. But the truth of the matter is maybe Mr. Doge himself, Elon Musk, is a little closer to the truth on this one than Donald Trump is. Donald Trump is delusional. He is hoping that everybody else is as delusional as he is. And that we'll all wake up one day and he'll be king of the world with all of the money. Not most of the money, but all of the money. And everybody will be bowing down to him because he is the king. I think he thinks that he's not going to die. I really believe he can't see himself as an 85-year-old man. I don't think he can see that. He can't see himself as being mentally or physically demised in some sort of way, that he won't have use of all of his faculties, or he won't have use of all of his physical arrangements. He can't see that, but that's going to be the first thing that's going to change him, because he thinks that once he gets rich, that he'll just revert back to the way he was when he was your age, Ed, when he was 60 years old, and he'll be playing golf every day. Everybody ringing the phone off the hook, wanting to know how they can get an audience with him, and he'll call yay on this and nay on that. He'll actually be king of the world. That's his dream. He thinks that's still possible. So he's going about it. He's one of the first presidents that we've ever had that never says that I'm going to make Americans super. There's going to be a chicken in every pot, a Ford in every garage or driveway. He never says any of that kind of stuff, because it ain't about us. It's about him.
Yeah. Well, so I want to remind you, you're listening to or watching The Deal. It's Monday, April 7th, 2025. The market started out crazy. It was a whiplash. At one point, it was back up, and then they were poised to have the biggest day ever on the S&P, because of it had dropped so far down that if it went up and they went back in positive territory, I don't know what the rest of the day is going to portend. We're recording this fairly early in the day, so we'll see by the time we get to 4 o'clock when the market closes. But I have a feeling, Val, that nothing much is going to change. That you'll see this volatility all day long, and probably for the foreseeable future, because Trump has announced the tariffs. Because let's just go back to where this all began. Trump announces the tariffs, and he has this stupid formula that he comes up with. And I've seen the formula on a number of outlets. So here it is. If you want to see the formula, it makes no sense to most people. But if I describe it to you, what he says is a trade deficit is always bad for the United States, regardless, right? So if the Chinese, or say even Canadians, are importing more into the U.S. than we're exporting to Canada, that means they're trying to get over on us. Well, sometimes we ain't got shit to sell to them, Val. This is basic economics. Sometimes somebody has a product that we need that we don't have. And he keeps talking about manufacturing coming back to the United States. Now, you've studied political science for a long time. You taught political science at the college level, whatever. You've written a number of books on the American politics or whatever. Why do some politicians go back to this thing that a trade imbalance is always bad, particularly the Republicans? And also, they're the ones who run up the debt and deficit, but then they want everybody else to respond to them cutting programs, none of which ran up the debt or deficit. It's always tax cuts that run up the debt and deficit for rich people. Tell me, Val, where these tariffs are going to end up. Do you think that by Wednesday or Thursday, Donald Trump will lose some of his gumption? Because he did it before. Already this year, he was threatening tariffs at one point, and he didn't do it. He pulled back and gave 30 days. Now he went to his April 2nd, his day of liberation, and he did it. And you see the amount of volatility. Is there anything in him or in any of the Republicans that would maybe put the kibosh on this, maybe for like 90 days or something, to try to keep this from spiraling out of control? Are there any Republicans that got enough guts?
I don't think so. Not a single one, because all of them are afraid of being primaried in the political science world. That means death to these Republican office holders, and they fear that more than they fear anything else. So we can forget about them having a set of gonads to come up and say something against the would-be king, Donald Trump. So that's not going to happen. So you got to focus on Donald Trump himself and ask yourself the question, can he do a reversal? Will he pause or reverse the tariffs in some kind of way or reduce them? And I think the answer has to lie with opportunity. If he sees anything in the market that indicates that this thing may be working on some level, he won't move a budge, an inch. He won't do anything. But if things stay and remain the same, and the stock market keeps falling, and people say the possibility of a recession is not 50-50, as George Will, I read an article on George Will this morning, it won't be 50-50 anymore. It'll be, the projection will be underwater, that there is a 65 or greater percentage possibility or probability that we will go into a recession. If that happens, then I think Trump will come in with some kind of face-saving initiative to say that, well, Canada has backed down on this, and India has done X, and China has agreed to do Y, so we'll reward them by dropping the tariffs down from 10% to 8%. It would look like he was still in control, and things are working in his way. And that's all he's interested in, is to be or look like he's in control of the process. But to answer your question directly, I don't see the Republican elected officials having the nerve to do anything about it, regardless of the number of protests and how many they are, regardless of how many people try to call Social Security and can't get through, regardless of how many checks get lost. That ain't gonna change Donald Trump's mind, not one iota.
And I think you're right. Hey, I hear some music in my ear. Let's take a break. When we come back, you said protests, so that's where I want to start. When we come back, there were some protests all around the country. I happened to run into one that was in Durham, North Carolina this weekend. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
It's like we just arrived.
I'm here today because of Tanya's relentless efforts in trying to get me healed. When I came back from the war, I became a homeless veteran. I was barely hanging on by a thread. The one thing that was constant for me was music. Music led me to Tanya. Normally with a veteran, we think we can solve everything. The truth of the matter is we cannot.
I just knew that something was different, something was off. I let him know that he wasn't alone. There are people that loved him.
And says, Michael, I know you've got a plan to take your life today, but if you give me just 5 more minutes to love you.
5 more minutes, 5 more minutes, honey, 5 more minutes to love. Michael has actually taught me what it looks like to accept help.
Did you ever think we would be back here after he lost in 2020? I mean, what were the odds that he was going to win?
I was worried because of the millions of Americans that voted for him then in 2016. 77 million voted for him this time. 72 for Kamala Harris, 92 didn't vote. That's got to change, because if this goes on, we will have the return of a Stalinist type, government. With a dictator at the head of it.
Yeah, so welcome back to our second segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. We're just watching our stock portfolios on a roller coaster. And it would be funny, Val, if it wasn't so unnecessary. I guess is the word best word I could use to describe. None of this is necessary. We find ourselves here, and then on the way back in, you saw some video of protests in downtown Durham on Saturday that got very boisterous at some points. And let's start there, Val. I counted 3 black people besides me. So I called some people up. Some people went to protest in Charlotte and DC and different places. Black folks, that is. And I'm talking about black folks here because when I got up in the mirror this morning, I was colored. So I'm going to talk about us a little bit. And I talked to some black people who said under no circumstances were they going to protest. And they said, well, this is white people's problems because they brought it on themselves, and it's just a if around and find out moment for them, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I take a different position, Val. I understand the sentiment, but I don't understand how we ever get past some of this. We talked about off camera a little bit earlier how if you go down to the information about the Underground Railroad, they've taken off that it was to free the slaves, and they've taken off Harriet Tubman's picture and all this other stuff. There's a much larger issue here, isn't it? So talk to me real quick about why would you cede all your control to it and put it in somebody else's hands? Obviously, it's in other people's hands anyway, right? Because you got to kind of form coalitions and whatever, blah, 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 to make stuff work. But why would you not go protest? Why would you not say anything? Why would you just say, well, it's their problem and if around and find out?
That is not a part of our core culture, Ed, our meaning black folk. We don't normally resolve issues by protesting to higher powers. If you go back and you look at the pre-civil rights movement in the black community, and you look at our segregated communities, and you ask yourself, how were problems resolved and things of that nature? We don't have a history of getting together and protesting and having the will of the group at large adhered to and those kinds of things. That's not the way we do things. And so this whole business of protest, even voting, I would say, is something that is not natural and normal to black culture. So we have to really work at it hard to make it happen for us. So to me, that will be the first and overarching reason why you only saw 3 people other than yourself there at the protest march. But we're getting better at that. We were very good at that back in the 50s and 60s when we were protesting for something that had a black cover to it. We were talking about black people sitting in the back of the bus. We were talking about black folks being able to vote. We were talking about black people not being able to go to the theater or the ice cream shop of their choice, or the deli or the diner of their choices. But now we are talking about something a little bit more abstract. When you start talking about tariffs, you start talking about markets, you start talking about investment portfolios and those kinds of things. Too many blacks can't relate to that. So they stay at home and they wait to things that they can automatically relate to, and then they may come out and vote. And depending upon who's talking about it, if there's somebody like Al Sharpton or Stacey Abrams or Michelle Obama doing the talking, that's one thing. But to have a white young lady from the State Department of Barack Obama administration, that's a whole different animal there. So there are lots of reasons why we don't participate in protests. None of them are valid or good, because we should be out there participating in any protest that affects us. And all of this stuff, whether it's voting rights or tariffs or whatever, it affects us as well as any other culture in this country, because we are part of the.
We're part of the population. One of the things that struck me, Val, is as I was looking at all the different signs, they were talking about, all these different executive orders, some which have eliminated jobs, some which have eliminated services, some that have eliminated funding for research for things like cancer. And the last I looked, all of those are colored issues too. We all need jobs. We all need services. We all need, safety, security. We need, funding for research, those kind of things. And that this whole notion that it's only a white person's problem strikes me as odd when if the market continues to tumble like it is, and then all these projections on recession take place, but there's no social safety net now. Who do you think are going to be some of the first people that are going to be impacted by that? And not that Black people are overly represented in taking from the social safety net. Everybody's going to be impacted, but the fact is that people are going to be impacted, and we don't have a backup plan, right? So I kept going back to, was there anything in Kamala's campaign? And a lot of people point out to her saying that she wouldn't have done anything different than Joe Biden. That was something that was beyond the pale or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But Val, here's my thing. We knew that Donald Trump was a horrible president the first time. We knew that if he had a chance to do Project 2025, despite his protestations, he was going to do it. We knew that none of the people that were supposed to be the cooler heads, right? The more seasoned Republicans were going to be in his administration this time. It was going to be Stephen Miller, was going to be his right-hand man, right? We knew that they were going to push for the most radical things like tariffs and like ending DEI, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Now, Val, I want to talk about North Carolina a little bit, but before I get to there, one of the other things that they're doing, though, is this deportation of people without due process. And so Marco Rubio, who is the Secretary of State, has decided to cancel visas. So let's look at this, and then we'll talk about deportations.
The U.S. putting out a strong warning in both words and actions to international students granted student visas, and here it is. Do not engage in activism. So far, the U.S. revoking more than 300 student visas. Here's Secretary of State Marco Rubio with that warning.
We gave you a visa to come and study and get a degree, not to become a social activist that tears up our university campus. I think it's crazy to invite students into your country that are coming onto your campus and destabilizing it. We're just not going to have it. So we'll revoke your visa, and once your visa is revoked, you're illegally in the country and you have to leave.
So let's bring in attorney Robin Nunn. Robin, Secretary Rubio's words, for some, are raising question about First Amendment rights and due process in court. Which argument will stand, Rubio or his detractors?
Well, it's interesting. It's a really tough call. It raises serious constitutional concerns. On the one hand, if these students were targeted based on their speech, particularly dissent or protest, it could be viewed as a violation of their First Amendment rights. I believe there's a very strong argument for that. If revocations occurred without proper notice or the opportunity to respond, that's a classic due process issue. I think the courts are definitely going to get involved. I think they're likely to intervene. And I think this is going to become a broader policy pattern that we're going to see more of.
So, Val, one of the places they've gone is in the academy. Again, a place where you used to work. You used to be a professor, college professor. One of those pointy head dudes that, kids would look up to, and you had all the knowledge in the world or whatever. What is the goal? I think I know what the goal is, but what is the goal of removing foreign students with visas who have said anything contrary to the United States from the academy? What do you think they're trying to do with their policy of revoking all these visas without any due process?
Well, you got to understand why they started this whole process in the beginning, Ed. This was to validate a promise that they had made to their voters, to the MAGA crowd. They want to continue showing MAGA that we're still in business and we're still getting all of these guys out of this country that don't have a America First attitude about them. And we're doing it regardless of what their status happens to be, how high up on the cultural totem pole they are. It doesn't matter. We're going to get them all out of here and turn this thing back to America First, where some little dairy farmer in Iowa can be just as important as some law professor in New York City. That's the real America. And that's what we're going to get back to eventually by getting rid of all of these pointy head guys and getting back to the real American, which is you poor folks who voted for me. So that's why I'm doing this stuff, and that's why I will continue to do it. And the mistake I think some of us make, Ed, is to sometimes think that there is a well thought out rationale, a strategy, a goal that's been set up that they can tick off milestones toward that goal, that, okay, we've done this by X date and we've under budget and on this particular milestone here. And so we can go on and the next one will be 3 months down. They don't think that way. And for us who do think that way in a linear, logical, reasonable way, we miss what they're saying. It doesn't calculate with us because our brain is set up to talk about things that make sense, that's reasonable, that's logical, that you can repeat. When you look at, you keep talking about what I used to do when I used to teach and those kinds of things. I think the most telling impact on me now as an elderly citizen is my undergrad work that I did. My undergrad work was in psychology, and I learned there that when people talk about experiments and those kinds of things, it has to be repeatable. Somebody else has to take your same facts and measurements and apply it to a whole different subject matter over here and come up with the same result. Or your stuff is what the Japanese call nayo, is no good. Okay? So Trump doesn't operate on those kinds of things. And some of us who are gauging and measuring Trump, we want to operate that way. And we come up with a zero. We can't understand it because he does not operate on measurable, repeatable standards of doing anything. He does not operate on having rational reasons for doing anything. And as long as he doesn't do that, as long as he's just out for Donald Trump, most of us on this side of Donald Trump will never understand him because we're still trying to figure out, well, why is he doing that? And it doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't make sense. And he doesn't give a shit that it doesn't make sense. He just wants to do it. This is him. The only thing that makes sense to him are base things like retribution, like money, like power. If you can get one of those, show him how he can get up a notch on one of those three categories, he's with you. He'll buy into it 100%.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. You know, the last part of this thing, Val, before we take a break, is that, you know, the student deportations is one thing. I think he wants to cause as much disruption in the academy as possible because he's resentful to those people who are smarter than him. All right, because he was not at the top of his class at Wharton. He probably got in there mainly because he had money, not because of any skill. But we won't even go there. But beyond that, there have been people deported. So on the way out, I will show you a video of somebody who was wrongfully deported. The court has said that he needs to be brought back, and the administration pretty much gave him a middle finger and said, "Forget you. We ain't doing nothing." And that's where we stand. So I hear some music right here. When we come back, we're going to come back to North Carolina because I want to talk about the North Carolina Supreme Court. And then I want to talk about this basketball team in Durham, and then one down in Columbia, South Carolina. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
Breaking news, a highly emotional day for the family of a man wrongfully deported to El Salvador ended with hope. This afternoon, a judge ordered the U.S. government to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia back to the United States. Thanks for joining us for News 4 at 5. I'm Sean Yancey.
I'm Erica Gonzalez. The judge says the government must get Abrego Garcia back to the United States and by Monday night. The ruling came after a dramatic hearing where a government lawyer acknowledged to the judge that he couldn't make a case for the deportation, which happened last month.
News 4's Paul Wagner was in the courtroom for the hearing today. Paul, bring us up to speed. Where do things stand right now?
Well, Sean and Erica, this was an extraordinary hearing here at federal court in Greenbelt. Inside the courtroom here on the second floor, Jennifer, which is the wife of Mr. Garcia, was sitting at the defense table with her attorney, and behind her, the gallery was packed with clergy, family members, union members, and supporters. And when the judge issued her ruling, the gallery broke out in applause. What we want you to hear now is what Jennifer had to say when she left the courtroom, followed by what her attorney had to say, attorney Simon Sandoval Motionberg. Take a listen.
I want to say thank you to everyone that has helped us, that has supported us in fighting this, and we will continue fighting for Kilmer, for my husband.
The thing that was most striking for me about the hearing was that the attorney for the government, who handled the matter very professionally, had so few answers to the judge's factual questions. Over and over again, he stated that his clients had not provided him with certain information, that his clients had not provided him with certain documents. Really, all just goes to show how little importance the federal government has given to this case. How little effort they spent, even after it was made clear to them that they had committed a grievous illegal error. They've spent little effort actually making it right. In fact, I think it's fair to say that they've spent no effort whatsoever in making it right.
And welcome back to our third and final segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. Val Atkinson is here. April 7th, 2025. It is a holiday in America, Ed Clark Day. If you're not off, you need to petition your employer next year to ask for Ed Clark Day off. You might as well. Well, wait a minute. Hold on, Val. They can't do that. I'm colored, so there's no black holiday. So wait a minute. I forgot. But on a serious note, Val, let's start with something very serious, and something that's given me a lot of heartburn over the last, ever since November, but particularly over the weekend when the North Carolina Court of Appeals 3-judge panel came back. Only one judge was sane and rational. Two who were Republicans who based on their questions, because I listened to the oral arguments because I'm that kind of person. It seemed to me that they were trying to figure out a way to throw out 65,000 votes, Val. And if you're looking at your screen, here's a list it's an Excel spreadsheet, and go download it. And you know me, Val. I'm from Boone Level, North Carolina, Harnett County, lovely spot in South Central North Carolina. And I put in the zip code for places where I know a lot of black people live. And guess what, Val? A lot of those votes are being challenged. I also looked at Cumberland County, where a military base is that was Fort Liberty, or actually was Fort Bragg, then Fort Liberty, now back to Fort Bragg, where Fort Bragg is, where there's a lot of military people who live overseas, and those ballots are being challenged. Because the rationale behind, at least during the oral arguments, is, well, they've never lived in North Carolina. But they're with their parents who have served at Fort Bragg. They made their home in North Carolina. And so when the parents registered, they registered. And when the child registered and became 18, they registered in North Carolina because they wouldn't have anywhere else to register. But they want to throw those out too. So two things, Val. You're a Negro, so you can answer this question. But you also been in the military, so you can answer this question too. There's a reason why they're targeting those two groups. I know what my answer is. You tell me what the answer is. Why they targeted these people in Nash County and Harnett County and also in the Fort Bragg area. I have my thoughts about why they did. You tell me.
Well, they target them because they've done the counting already, and they probably determined that there are more Republicans in that area, more Democrats, I'm sorry, in that area that they've targeted than there are in some other related areas. What they're trying to do is to get rid of enough Democratic votes so that the election is swung around and the Republican who lost now becomes the winner. I've never seen anything as blatant as this, that they would go this route to win an election that everybody can see that they lost in there. Why don't they just say, we'll keep having re-elections and re-elections on top of that until the person we want to win wins? Because that's basically what it is. But what they're looking at in terms of targeting military people, I think they're going to make a mistake on that one. But they had to put some in there so that the results would not look so lopsided or one-sided. Most of your military voters are Republicans all over the world, in this country and people who are abroad. I don't know how we became that way, we meaning military people and veterans and dependents and everybody. But if you lump all of us together, active duty, reserve, veterans, dependents, we are overwhelmingly Republican. So they needed to put a little bit of that in there so that the pool, the subject matter, didn't look overwhelmingly Democratic. So nobody could say, well, you got, 60,000 Democrats here. And even if you get 20,000, 10, 100 or whatever, you're going to get a bunch of Democrats. And to have them not to be able to justify why they should continue to be a registered voter, that takes away from your opponent. What we want to do is take away Democratic votes. So they had to throw the military people in there at Fort Bragg, is what we're talking about, to make it look fair. That's all that was. And there are some military people who vote Democratic, but the majority of them do vote Republican. So that's the only reason they threw them in there.
Well, you win the prize for today, because you hit it right on the head. It's a smokescreen, because when you parse through the numbers, Val, it's clear that it's way more of those other people. But they had to find one pool of people, and probably a pool of people would be also less likely to protest this because they wouldn't even know about it. Here's the thing. There's really no notification that you're on this list. I went on my own volition to go and look at the list just to make sure my name is not on there, right? And it's not. I couldn't find it. I didn't find your name either, for that matter. But the thing is they probably targeted people that they also thought were less likely to look at the list in a timely manner, contact the Board of Election. Here's my issue, Val. Again, you're the political science professor. You know that voting has been fraught since day one, right? Voting in the democracy that we're in is very tenuous anyway, right? It's really almost not a democracy when you pull back the curtain, because from the beginning only white men can vote, and only white men with land, and then it was all white men, and then it was white men and some black men with reservations, right? Because they immediately went to having literacy tests and all this other stuff. Then it went to white women, right? But again, there were caveats on that. And so probably not until, I don't know, maybe the late 80s, early 90s, maybe when Bill Clinton gets elected, that's probably the first election where there's this explosion in young people and black people and all kind of people voting without a lot of encumbrances. And I think what they saw is that, number one, we're going to end up with a Negro president. And guess what? We did. And then now the rebound is we got to prevent either having a Negro or a woman president. And the only way we can do it is do this kind of stuff. Here's the long-winded question here. If I can throw out the 65,000 votes for Allison Riggs, why don't you look at every race then? What's sacrosanct about the race with Allison Riggs that you only throw those out? Would it not impact every race? I mean, you know, do you get what I'm asking? Why would it be just that we just look at these votes for this race if it's so important that we make sure that everybody is a qualified voter? Why don't you look at everybody?
Well, that's the reason that they came up with the number 65,000, because Allison Riggs' race was the one that was close enough, okay, that these numbers would affect. If you won your race, for an example, lieutenant governor or governor or whatever, by 250,000 votes, then this won't affect you one way or the other, regardless of how it comes out. But if you're one of those who just won your race by 10,000 votes or 703 votes or whatever, then this number here may affect you. And you make a good point, Ed. There could be some races in there that fall within the $60,000 to $65,000 class that somebody may want to go back and take a look at. If there's a Democrat that lost his race by, say, 25 or 27,000 votes, you know, you could go do this same thing with your numbers, right? So it's a numbers game, and not yet has it gotten to the point that everybody wants a recount. But you've set one hell of a precedence here. So here comes 26, and here comes 28 and beyond, where people are going to be looking at this, especially in North Carolina and maybe some other states, and say, hey, let's go back and have these people certified that they are who they say they are. Let me go back and pick out these 60 or 70 or 80,000 votes and make them come in and recertify their existence or their identity or whatever. So you've opened up Pandora's box, and the Supreme Court may have to get involved and say, okay, that crazy stuff happened once in North Carolina, to make sure we have a Republican Supreme Court and all of this other kind of stuff that has a super majority and can't be overturned. But we're going to stop this right now. We're not going to have it anymore. No more of this nonsense. But our decision will not be retroactive, and you can't go back and change what happened in North Carolina. It's like saying we're going to play this game of fairness and democracy, but I and I alone will have the authority to say if a decision that comes out of the democracy is valid or not. What have I just said? I've said that you guys can vote and do whatever you want, but I'll decide whether or not your results is worth a shit. So you really don't have a democracy.
And I think that's what I'm driving at, is that, like I said, it's been tenuous from the beginning. You know, whether we even had one, and the fact that we're now arguing over 65,000 votes of people who, when you submit your stuff to the Board of Elections, the Board of Elections should clear you. And from what point can you stop having to constantly contact the Board of Election to see if you're still valid? That's where the vetting should be, is at that level, at the county Board of Election, because that's the way the system is right now. If they want to go to some other system, then they're going to have to put that in place. But to do it now, it just seems to me, I don't know. I know what the goal is, Val, is to keep people from voting and make sure that we don't have a democracy. But
we have to stop fooling ourselves about that, that the goal of Republicans is to stop people from voting and have their choices validated, regardless if the majority of the people want them in or not. They are anti-democratic. They are anti-democracy. And we need to start off from that point and move forward if we want to really do anything about the type of government we have. Because right now, we do not have a real, true democracy in America.
Yeah. And there's very few places where there is, and the right wing is making efforts in a lot of places. I saw a good movie over the weekend called Apocalypse in the Tropics about what went on in Brazil in the evangelical movement, which makes up about 30% of Brazil, which also makes up about 30% here, gained control of the party that Jair Bolsonaro was in, similar to what's happened here in America. I think the underlying all of this, Val, is the theocracy and the need for apocalypse. I say it over and over again over the years that there are a number of people who want the world to come to an end because they want the baby Jesus to come back. And it's going to be very unpopular for me to say, but there are some people that believe that for the apocalypse to happen, you got to have this total disaster, right? Israel has to blow Palestine up. The world economy has to collapse. There has to be some conflagration, some war, and then Jesus is going to return and everything's going to be fine. So people are willing to risk that for their religion. And it doesn't take 100% of the people to do it. It takes 30%, right? And in the case of North Carolina, I think Republicans make up about 33%. But they've been able to gain full control because they've been able to manipulate their people, that they stay solid all the time. And then our folks, they decide to vote sometimes. And when you don't vote every time, then you end up with a legislature that is majority Republican when you have people in the state who say that they're progressive, but you have a majority Republican. And now you're going to have a Supreme Court that may only have 2 Democrats on it. Right. There's even if Riggs was on the court, there's no way that
majority.
You still have a Republican majority. So they have to be completely in control. I guess that's my point, Val. Anyway, before we run out of time, I wanted to talk about, I went to a wake yesterday in Durham. I saw these people, they were walking around with their heads down, Val. They're just looking sad. It was terrible. It was one of the worst things ever in my life.
Yeah.
Oh, the Duke Blue Devils managed to lose. They were up 14, Val, and Houston won by 3. How did that happen, Val? You tell me. How did that happen?
Well, it's something called choking in sports. And we had 3, I'm a Duke fan, have been since '83. We started 3 freshmen. So you would think that on a stage like that, freshmen would be more apt to choke than anybody else. But it was a guy from Georgia named James who couldn't get the ball in, a guy named Proctor from Australia who, if you would have put him in a kayak in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, he couldn't get the ball wet. And so it was bad news. It was bad news for those guys. They choked. They went 10.5 minutes without scoring, but 1 basket. They went 7 straight minutes without scoring anything. They had a 6-point lead with 30 seconds left and couldn't win. 6-point lead with 30 seconds left, and you lose the game by 3. It was so sad that, especially with the one and done situation now, you can't say wait till next year or whatever. The team that you saw play on Saturday will not be back. None of the starting 5 will be back next year for Duke. So this is one that'll go down in the annals of basketball misery. for the Duke Blue Devils, and you just got to taste it, swallow it, and get over it and move ahead. But it was one of the most bitter losses as a fan and supporter that I have ever experienced. It was terrible.
Yeah, it was, and then yesterday also South Carolina got dragged about Connecticut, and I told you I was a little bit surprised. You told me you weren't. That Connecticut has a all-around team, and it showed yesterday in how they beat the brakes off of Don Staley's Gamecocks. Now, one thing I'm okay with is the basketball hasn't been bad in either tournament I've watched, but I am concerned about as soon as the game is over, the next thing they're talking about is which team, especially on the men's side, the player's going to go to, as if we're in the NBA. like the season's over. So now I'm going to be plying my trade at another team because I'm a free agent. And I still think that's problematic. There's also some teams that got 28-year-old guys on them because they've been in D3 and in D2, now they're in D1. And, I was reading a story this morning about a 28-year-old who's, in the portal. It's looking for a D1 team because he's played at 5 schools already. And so it starts to make you wonder, what is college athletics anymore other than what it was from the beginning, which was, especially in the 70s when they started letting Negroes play, it was a way for the university to make money. And I'm still a fan. I still watch, right? You're still a fan. You still watch because we're former athletes and we like the competition and stuff. But it does become very problematic to me, and we'll explore that again. I know we had a former assistant coach from Duke, who's now at Memphis, on to talk about it before. Because I think the Blue Devils won a championship when Nolan Smith was playing, and I think it was 2015. So 10 years ago, they won a championship with Nolan Smith and John Shire, the current coach. And Nolan's been on this program before to talk about the change in athletics, and now he's at Memphis with a stop in Louisville as well. Anyway, I hear some music in my ear. I'm not going to have Val, take any more abuse from me. So, Val, anything I need to know, anything you want to tell everybody before we get out of here?
Well, my wife does not have to keep sharp instruments away from me. I ain't got to that point that I'm ready to be Harry Carey or anything. But it was devastating to lose that game after we played the way we did. But I'm over it now. I'm looking forward to getting my boys ready. I'm still coaching Parks and Rec. And so getting my boys ready to see if we can do a little better next year than Duke did this year. So right now, that's my focus. Parks and Rec, guys, here we come.
Anyway, and if you are if you're a glutton for punishment and you want to do something to make yourself sick today, pull up the market, Yahoo Finance, Wall Street Journal, all of them have stock tickers and you can watch it. I've been having mine up for the last few days, and right now, as of around noon on Monday, all the indices are down. Crude oil is just, at one point was in some green territory, but it's down to $60 a barrel. S&P is at 49. The Dow's at 37,000. NASDAQ is just shade over 15,000. All of that means that they're way down from where they were when some guy named Joe Biden was president, like thousands of years ago, right? They act like, they used to always talk about the market in terms of it being, something that Republicans could talk about. But when Joe Biden was president, you couldn't talk about it. Well, the market is down. and I expect it to be down by the time it closes at 4 today. Anyway, so go out and do something good for somebody today, and I really do mean that, and we'll see you again next time. Bye.